Hello and welcome to Sunflower's State of Mind. I'm Kent and this is my pal.
It's the OG crowd tonight.
OG? It's the OG crowd.
Have we had Zach Wharf, resident Klingon.
Have we had a Kent and Zach show since the pilot? Has it been?
Has it been just us? I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't think it's been just us. It's episode 29. Holy cow.
Episode 29. Holy cow. That is a milestone for Southwest Kansas podcasts. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're so happy that you joined us here tonight. As you know, this is a Sunflower State of Mind. Again, I'm Kent Williams, and with me, as always, is the wonderful Zach Wharf. If this is your first time joining in, thank you so much for being here. We want to hear from you. Give us some feedback. Drop a comment in the comment section. Send us a private message on Facebook.
Let us know.
Our personal page. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit us up there. Don't forget to follow, like, subscribe. The more you interact, even if it's the angry faces, if you're not agreeing with us, we want to see that.
Ooh, yes, the hate watchers. Let us know you're hate watching.
Absolutely. We want to, it rises us up in everybody's algorithms. So, we want to be seen. We want to give a shout out to our other co-hosts who aren't here tonight, Whitney Buckman and Caitlin Guthrie. They'll be joining us next week.
Whitney's doing special things tonight. That's why he's not here.
He's doing special things tonight. We're not at liberty to discuss those things.
Can't wait to talk about it.
We might have a big announcement next week. I don't know. So yeah, you definitely want to tune in and see what we've got going on next week in the community. We had some polls on the Facebook page here this last week, Zach.
You guys came through, gave us some answers.
You did come through. We want to thank the audience for participating in those polls and letting us know kind of what you feel and what you think. And one of us just blew up. Oh my gosh, that was crazy.
We got a cat joining us tonight, apparently.
Which cat is this? Introduce the cat.
This is Celine.
I want to know.
She's
Hello,
old.
Celine.
She's usually on my lap during the show. You guys just don't ever see her, but tonight she wanted to say hi.
That was a TikTok video. The TikTok thing makes me feel really old. We're editing videos and we're doing all this, and I'm like, yeah, I can edit really cool videos, and then Zach's doing all this other cool stuff, and the TikTok stuff and the overlays. I don't know if you're old like me and the cat. You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so. Well, yeah, thank you again for being here. We want to say thank you. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all the good things. Get us out there, argue with us, agree with us. Let us know what you're thinking throughout the show. We want to know.
We did not do events tonight, but we still need to shout out our event sponsor.
Yeah, we absolutely do. We want to give a shout out to Dude Smell This LLC. Dude Smell This LLC. We are passionate about good products, exceptional service, and a positive team spirit. Dude Smell This LLC offers the highest quality CBD products at the most competitive prices. Dude Smell This LLC can tailor your CBD to fit your dietary needs, from sports rebound, anti-aging, skin treatment, eye treatment, sleep syrup, easy queasy elixirs, respiratory support, immune boost, and full spectrum needs. Visit dudesmellthis.com and get started on your journey for a better, beautiful way of life. Dude Smell This LLC, located at 920 East Grand in Hayesville, Kansas. Call them now, 316-351-4620.
I was scrolling through their website today, and they had all kinds of like, name what your ailment is, and there was a tincture listed for it. It was pretty impressive.
So, tonight we were going to have Mike Webb on, the owner-operator of Dude Smell This LLC. Something came up, so we will have to reschedule him for another week. He did reach out to me and let me know that an emergency had come up and he felt really bad. Wanted to apologize to you and our audience. So last week we had Representative Bob Lewis on the show, and we really wanted to,
for a half a show. We're not giving him full credit. You gave me half a show,
and we started late, so it wasn't even really a half a show. He is excited to come back onto the show and visit and give us some more time, so we do have to appreciate that and say thank you for that. We do want to thank him for taking the time to be here and giving us this short little spat that he did. As well, it was quite interesting. There was our host discussed a plethora of topics, and tonight we really wanted, with the holiday, and since we missed it and we didn't really get to talk too much about it, 420 being last week, we wanted to talk about the state of cannabis here in the state of Kansas, and the things that are going on, the things that aren't going on. As you know, in Garden City, we used to have American Shaman. I think they were in Dodge City as well. Mm-hmm. A CBD store. They didn't really thrive. They didn't get off. They didn't, it wasn't the big thing it is in many other parts of the country. So we wanted to have Mike on to talk a little bit about CBD and what it is. Right.
It's gotten a lot more popular since they left too.
It is, and it's it's medicines. You say tinctures, Zach. So if people really don't know, what's your take on CBD, Zach? Is it THC? Can you answer that question first for people that don't know what CBD is?
No, it's in my personal opinion, there's still an element missing to it and I think THC plays a vital role in with the CBD, but I think it's a great substitute to keep things legal for what we're allowed to do in our dystopian of a state at the moment. But so it's great to have it as an option, and CBD absolutely plays a role in healing. So I think it's a great option, and I would like to see more of it.
The CBD and
Yeah,
THC come from the same plant,
right.
do they? They do, correct?
Well,
And
yeah,
hemp, and
technically.
yeah.
I mean,
So,
hemp
yeah,
is there. There's a lot of working around loopholes and corners in order to get the CBD, and it has to be industrial grade hemp, and so it takes a lot more for them to harvest it, but they still are able to do it. And so yeah, it's all perfectly legal. What they do for what Kansas allows right now, and it's great
sure.
that that's an option for people. And the reason I say that there's an element to THC does something special because, like, take your epileptic patients and people with seizures, THC plays a vital role in calming those seizures.
Yeah,
And
and
it
we'll
doesn't
touch
take
base.
a lot of that, but it does have an influence on it. Something
Sure.
that our guest tonight will be great to talk about because
Yeah.
we've got George Hanna. I don't know if you guys have seen our posts about it this week. I've been super excited for this interview.
Yeah. So from Kansas Normal, we do have George Hanna here with us tonight. Let's go ahead and bring him up and continue the discussion because he's going to be able to educate us a lot more here tonight. George, thank you for being on the show tonight.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me. I know it's been a long time coming. I know Zach's been on me for, well, at least a year now, trying to get me on.
I know it wasn't my first ask.
It has almost been a year for our show. I think we've been on 7 months now.
Yeah.
Which is pretty crazy. Like we were saying at the beginning of the show, Zach and I needed an outlet for my political thing. Vote no at the time, or vote yes for Value Them Both was going on at the time. I previously hosted a podcast here in Garden City called Growing Garden City, where we kind of talked politics. We interviewed politicians and highlighted businesses and things like that with it. So vote yes rolled around, and I was like, Zach, we have to get on and educate people in our community on what's really going on there. So we're excited that you're here with us to continue the platform that we're building to talk about CBD, THC in the state of Kansas. A lot, and as I was saying to you pre-show, it's not talked about out here. People don't find it a comfortable subject to talk about. It's kind of out of sight, out of mind type of thing, but yet hundreds of our citizens are leaving daily to go to Colorado or Oklahoma, out here in Southwest Kansas City way to pick up THC products. So as we know, here this last week, the Kansas legislature expanded alcohol laws. Made it easier for before you had to have X amount of food sales before you could sell alcohol, and they took that away. So anybody selling food can peddle alcohol now. Sunday sales, holidays, things like that. They opened up quite a bit for it, but they have not touched medical cannabis or recreational cannabis in the state of Kansas. At Kansas Normal, what are you guys trying to do to bring a spotlight?
Well, first, let me just say I'm a very sarcastic person. So as soon as you say expanding alcohol, of course they would, because there's nothing dangerous or anything about alcohol, and I can't imagine that would kill anybody, whether you be driving or you happen to drink a lot and have a liver problem. However, cannabis, on the other hand, is just an evil drug. We all should be terrified of it because, it kills millions. Obviously, that's the complete opposite. Alcohol kills millions every year, and to the best of my knowledge, nobody has died from smoking weed or had an overdose of cannabis. Normal originated basically just as an educational arm all the way back from the 60s, trying to combat the reefer madness and do it in a cordial, scientific way. And sadly, nowadays, that kind of has stuck with us. It's too easy for current legislators to just brush us aside and consider us just a bunch of hippies, and all we want to do is just sit around, puff, puff, pass, pass, and that's just not the way it is. We've been excited to resurrect NORML the last few years. We've been very instrumental in drafting several bills now. And I'm very proud that one of them passed the House and fully expected it to pass 2 years ago. And due to some obstructionists out there with other ulterior motives, it didn't. So, we're still here fighting the fight. Obviously, we need anybody and everybody who's involved in cannabis or curious about cannabis. Just go to ksnormal.org and look it up, or join National NORML and get involved.
Yeah.
George, you and I have been doing this fight with NORML for a long time, and there's been multiple conversations where we've had talked about this year being the year. What would you say is the biggest obstacle that keeps it from being this year actually being the year?
Hands down, it is. Well, I would say it's a combination of two, and I would say there's a religious undertone where it's a taboo subject. The House race that I personally ran in 2018. My opponent was the single only legislator in the state of Kansas to vote against the hemp bill. And he cited religious reasonings for that. So, there's huge amounts of money being funneled into specific candidates to further religious topics within a platform, whether it be not necessarily cannabis, but obviously there's religious aspects of many, many bills that passed this year. And you were hinting at a few of them with the veto issues that we just went through last week. But right. So there's a ton of religious money coming in fighting this. And of course, nothing will motivate a politician quite like a camera and a dollar bill. So when you've got a few that's all they're interested in, they're not representing Kansas. They're just representing the TV camera in front of them with a dollar bill in their hand. So I would say there's certainly Senator Masterson is the principal of the obstructionists in there. Off camera we were talking a little bit about the numbers within the Senate. Ironically, I can't put a name to very many of them, but I would say that there's probably only 5 that would vote no under any circumstances for cannabis medical access in Kansas. The rest of them are that you would put in as a no vote right now. They're only taking their leads from leadership. And if leadership was behind it, I think that they would vote for it. They're not a rock the boat type of politicians. And there's quite a few of them in the Senate, and I'm specifically referencing the Republican side. So if I go off and offend anybody with my partisanship, believe me, my partisanship runs deep. I have a sincere disdain for both parties right now, but unfortunately, one of them is just ignorant and the other one is stupid. So I have issues with both.
And it's just mind-blowing to me that it's the religious groups that are blocking this when they love to cite the Bible when it's something convenient that they don't like I don't know, gay people. But when it comes to something that the Bible specifically says they should be in favor of, but they're not, they will ignore it head like tooth and nail. Okay, so the example I gave last week to Bob Lewis was Genesis 1:29. God says, "Behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed, which is upon the face of the earth." And what was his reaction?
He says that's not my interpretation of Scripture.
So more
I don't agree with you.
Basically, yeah.
Which was his answer to everything.
Yeah, it was.
But he's not an anomaly. He's the common denominator when it comes to politicians. But when you have discussions with actual people, it doesn't matter which side of the aisle they're on. You have a 7 out of 10 chance that they're absolutely for it happening. That I don't do it, but whatever, to each their own. In Finney County, We have, man, I forget the number now. It was a ton of liquor licenses around here. And there is no statistical benefit to alcohol at all. But they will not even have a conversation about a plant that has so much research behind it to show that it's a good thing. And we're not even allowed to have a discussion about it on the floor.
No.
It's wild.
Well, and who was the doctor Bob Lewis was talking about that testified in
Bob.
committees? Or
Dr. Vaugh.
Dr. Voth.
Which ironically, his entire business plan is he's a substance abuse facility owner.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if there's not a clear conflict of interest there, I don't know what is.
He's got to sell cannabis use as a gateway drug to tie to bigger things, so that way he keeps getting clients. And with that note, I do want to play a video from last week with Zach, Caitlin, and Bob Lewis, and we'll get your reaction, George, here on the other side.
From what I've seen of marijuana's use, I think it's a drug that moves people into harder drugs, and I just don't think it's good.
Even
for
that's
society.
been disproven statistically. You love statistics. You've cited them multiple times.
I've seen contrary statistics.
And there he's referring to Dr. Voth. That's who he's going to stand behind with statistics.
Well, I was at the special hearing that the Republicans put on in the state and Fed this year, and they only invited opponents. Proponents were not allowed to speak or invited. And I really wish that we had, and many thanks to Senator Holscher for asking that question and putting a spotlight on their hypocrisy for process. However, one of the things I was blowing her phone up is that all of the citations that the opposition were giving, quite frankly, were complete bullshit. How you interpret a particular paper, certainly it depends on the lens that you're looking from. I think, Westboro Baptist Church has pretty well bastardized the Bible, and everybody knows that. So depending on how you want to look at it and what your end message wants to be, you just read into it, cite it. Nobody's going to take the time to actually verify any of these citations. I, on the other hand, was wanting to see specific citations because I wanted to go back and put them back into context. One of the gentlemen that was with me was Lieutenant Colonel Todd Scatini, who is personal friends with the author of a book that Dr. Voth was citing, and he was taking it completely out of context. The author of the book, and I really wish I had it in front of me right now, was actually a proponent for cannabis and medical access. And the purpose of the book was intended to educate on that from that perspective. And it was being cited as a reason to be in opposition for cannabis when in fact it was the other way around. So unless you see a specific citation and in writing, citations mean nothing to me.
Has Dr. Voth's statistics information been peer reviewed? Is it accepted across the board?
Well, I mean, several things that he was citing absolutely were peer reviewed. And you can go to National Normal and you can find literally hundreds of peer reviewed medical journal studies that have been done on the benefits of cannabis. But unfortunately, if you take any one of those sentences or anything out of there and just like a well-run political ad, you take it out of context, you edit it, in a particular way, you can sit there and make it say just about anything you want it to say.
Right.
And that's ironically what they accuse us of doing when we go up and make these same citations.
The right uses projection? No.
No. So for me, I've kind of decided that education, you can't teach stupid. And that's kind of where I've gotten. So I've really kind of retracted a little bit from my um, political activity, just because I've become so disheartened that I just don't have the energy to continue to say the same thing over and over and over. Now, what I want to do,
we made the cardinal sin too of talking too much before the show, and I don't recall if we talked about on the live about your campaign history. You've run for office. Can you talk a little bit about that?
oh, sure.
We talked about that?
Well, I mean, it all started actually. I was the chair of the subcommittee for the school district that was in opposition to Fred Phelps purchasing a school building. And things just kind of snowballed from there. Ultimately, when I came back to Kansas, I ran and was elected as the national delegate for the Big First. Both of you guys, by the way, for Bernie Sanders. And I'm proud to say I was the only male to represent Bernie Sanders in the state of Kansas. And you're absolutely right, Zach. He said, if you want lasting change, you've got to kind of get off your ass, go back home and run for office and make the change. And I took that literally, came back. I did full-time campaign for 2 years because I was recovering from a near-fatal motorcycle accident. So I was on disability and had the luxury of being able to campaign full-time for 2 years to try and flip a House district. Made significant progress, however, still did not win. But I parlayed that into a term as the secretary for the Kansas Democratic Party, and sat on the executive board for the Kansas Democratic Party. I'm a little frustrated with that, only because they have a tendency to stay within an urban mentality, and urban thinking is not going to get Democrats elected in Western Kansas.
Wichita's already blue. You can't make it more blue.
That's correct.
I mean, you need to get out in your guys' neck of the state and not be afraid to have conversations about guns, and not be afraid to have conversations about these divisive issues, because more often than not, there is a common ground, and you're just not going to beat your opinion into somebody else's head. Right. So I propose that we do a state-sanctioned gun safety course.
Are you still on the board?
No, I was asked to run again, and I'm kind of getting there, because on a executive committee meeting, I proposed that the state get behind and do a state-sanctioned gun safety course for 18 to 21-year-olds for handguns. At the time, you couldn't own a handgun, or couldn't go purchase a handgun in the state of Kansas if you were between 18 and 21. But yeah, you could own one. Well, my opinion is what better way to address a safety concern than have Democrats put forward a gun safety bill. The right's certainly not going to be in opposition to that. It's helping address a need, but is opening the door for constructive conversations between, Republicans and Democrats, and those that assume that we're all out to take guns. And it really opens up a constructive dialogue, which hopefully will segue into other issues like cannabis and taxes and the water, and so. But then I was laughed at on the call by some in urban areas within our state, and to me that was so close-minded that I just don't have the energy to try and continue to open those minds. And it's kind of the same brick wall I ended up hitting with cannabis within the Dome after I left the state party. I picked my two topics that are near and dear to my heart, and that is veterans' rights and medical access to cannabis. Because I am a disabled veteran, and I'm on a pain management program, and I'm tested every 3 months. I do not use cannabis because I will jeopardize my benefits if I do in the state of Kansas. So, the two issues for me being veterans and cannabis, I continue to work with those, but I just refuse to allow my time to be diluted by other things.
And, I have two questions out of that. The first one, there are several military men and women that live here in Kansas that are in the same boat. They could benefit greatly from cannabis. What's keeping you here? Why are you staying And why aren't you becoming
How many
a
have
Kansas
left?
refugee as my a medical patient, in need of this and are a refugee because of Kansas's laws?
Well, you ready for this? What's the real question is why did I move from Colorado back to here?
Yeah.
What was I thinking that day? No,
Somebody get a straight jacket.
yeah, right. I have, I've got grandkids here, and by the way, I mean, Kent, you're saying you're old. Holy cow, what's that make me? But
I just haven't turned gray. I'm there. There's a few though.
I just turned 53 yesterday, so you still got a little ways, I think. But no, I got grandkids here, and my wife's family is from here, and family is certainly important. So, not to say that I don't travel back to Colorado quite frequently and go see my friends. But I have to be extra careful if I do any extracurricular activities out there because again, every 3 months I have to go into the VA and have blood work done, and then I'm sure if I pop out, then I've got questions to answer.
So you've been able to experience the pain benefits of cannabis.
Absolutely.
And so you can see how that would benefit other veterans then.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I have significant nerve damage in my entire left side. Everything from the waist down is either rotted, plated, or replaced. But my left side was crushed in a motorcycle accident. My kid was texting and driving and took care of that, put me in a wheelchair for almost a year. So the benefits I receive from cannabis is actually it calms down the nerve signals considerably. My balance was already shot. But just sitting until a year ago when I received a new device from the VA, my leg felt like somebody was just slashing it with a knife, just randomly. I'd wake up at 2 a.m. and it felt like somebody was literally stabbing me in the leg.
Wow.
And to slow down those signals, which is what my benefit was from cannabis, reduce that considerably. But luckily, for me, your tax dollars ended up spending $60,000 to put a electronic DRG implant in my back with wire leads running down my leg to interrupt those signals itself. $60,000 buys a hell of a lot of pot, but I'm not complaining either way.
Well, I mean, I'm glad they were able to get it fixed, but that's probably a huge risk to you anyway. And there's probably those that don't have a fix. It's just pain, and it might be able to be numbed. But there's also a massive addiction problem of we have a horrible fentanyl problem out in our area. So what do you tell politicians when you try and bring up these subjects to them, and the only answer you can get out of them is,
I don't agree with you.
Well, the fentanyl issue is just one of literally hundreds of other drugs. I mean that we as a country have been facing. You've got certainly meth, but I mean even before that, you've got cocaine, you've got heroin. And fentanyl is just a derivative of old school heroin, and you bring right up through the OxyContin
and the irony is a lot of those addictions started with just normal pain meds that they were cut off from. So then they seek a street drug, and a lot of that could have been avoided with cannabis.
But the important thing that differentiates between cannabis and the rest of those drugs is the physical addiction properties that they all share. There is no physical addiction to cannabis. Yes, there is an addiction component. It's mainly mental, just because you really like and appreciate not being in pain. Therefore, you want to continue to not be in pain.
So the same argument can be used on cheeseburgers.
Absolutely. I was just going to say, there's chocolate, there's cheeseburgers, and I'm just as guilty on those as anybody else. But you don't get sick when you go off of it. You don't have that 4-hour, lead time before you start getting the shakes like you would with, an opioid, where you've got to physically go have another one to bring your body back into some sort of equilibrium. And that's the most important thing that people just don't want to take that extra step. They, they think that since it's a drug, it must be like every other drug. And, and let's not forget alcohol in this conversation. I mean, we had that at the top of the show.
Right.
Alcohol does exactly the same thing to your body that fentanyl does and Oxycontin does. You can drink yourself to physical addiction to where you become sick if you don't drink. You cannot do that with cannabis.
I believe it was Cat Williams who said, you could take 13 aspirin and that'll be your last motherfucking headache. I mean, there are things that are dangerous in our life if they're misused, and nobody's arguing that they should be taken away. And it's just so ironic to me that the party that is all about smaller government is only about smaller government and the things that benefit them personally. Yeah. And, a Republican can never see a problem until it knocks on their front door. And it's just, it's so frustrating for it to be a constant issue when we're one of only 2 states, right, that don't have any medical movement.
It used to be 4. I think we're down to 2 now. There's been some.
North Dakota and us, I believe, is all that.
Yeah, Idaho was an old holdout for a while.
Texas just decriminalized a little bit, I believe.
Yeah, they just decriminalized it. They don't have legalization on the books.
Right. But even still,
it's ironic that you bring that part up, and there's 2 weapons that I think that we should be using in a much louder platform, and that is one, meaning Kansans, if you are a gun owner, and I was so thrilled to hear somebody else say this in the testimony, and I've been saying it for years. One of the questions they ask you in a background investigation when you go purchase a gun is whether or not you are a user of illicit and illegal drugs. So every state where there's legal access, federally speaking, cannabis is still Schedule 1, illegal, and illicit drug. Therefore, you perjure yourself when you fill out the background information when you go purchase a gun. Now, just the legal ramifications of that alone are huge, but yet they don't have a problem selling guns, but they're going to continue to jeopardize gun owners and the ownership of a gun by not allowing access to cannabis.
And there again, that's only a problem to them when it's a problem
money's
to
involved.
them.
I mean, if we all had the money to be able to throw at them and help guarantee re-election, this would have passed a long time ago.
Well, it's not even them. It's the other industries. It's our for-profit prison system.
Yeah, sure.
We have. They rely on these guys to keep the beds full.
Yeah, they're docile.
It wasn't too long ago we had a senator that said, we need to keep these beds full. Just because it's ironic you mentioned the prisons. The majority of for-profit prisons are actually former Republican politicians that own those companies. That started in the late 80s with a couple of Republican senators. And, of course, these are government contracts. So what better way to grease the skids on getting a government contract as a former politician for the very same government? But I'm going down a rabbit hole with that one, so I'll leave that one alone. But
we talked about Nixon and his follies.
I read the whole quote that he talked about. Yeah, of course we knew we couldn't go after them because they were black or because they were hippies, but we could go after their vices. I read that whole quote to him, and he again, I forget what did he say?
I don't agree with you.
I can't get enough of that, man.
I did have another question earlier. We were talking about veterans and the VA and so on, and we've seen the national deficit. And I'm going to kind of shift the gear just a little bit here. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but the national deficit has been in the news about raising the ceiling, lowering the ceiling to cover our bills and pay our bills. And the Republicans agreed in the House to they call a bipartisan bill. It's on the president's desk. It's on him now. This this bill has significant cuts for veterans to meet some of these bills. What they decided to slash was in our VAs and for our veterans. And so I wanted you to talk a little bit. I don't know if you've been following it or not, if you had a reaction to it, how it made you feel.
I've been following it a little bit, and I think in my opinion, I think it goes back a little further. There's been a big push for about 10 years to actually longer than that, but a legitimate push to privatize the VA for a little bit over 10 years now. Anytime you hear the words "for America" involved in any kind of group, you should immediately take a step back, do a little research, find the Koch brothers hooks in there somewhere. So Concerned Veterans for America has been a group that's part of Americans for Prosperity, and they have had a big push to privatize the VA. Personally, I think anytime that you look at privatizing a segment of our a benefit for our segment of our country and use it for profit, therefore you're exploiting the very people that you claim to serve because it's for profit. So immediately I get my hackles up when that happens. And I think that this is a coordinated effort to do exactly that. If you start cutting a lot of the funds and the benefits that go into the VA, you start reducing the benefits that these veterans are serving. Therefore, the complaints and the problems start to increase, and you start creating a need to privatize it. So I think what they're doing is they're creating the problem, knowing they already have the solution kind of in hand. And we do that a lot on a lot of issues that we have. Perfect example is the beds in the prisons. I mean, how better to make a for-profit prison than to create or maintain a criminality of cannabis or whatever you want to use that week.
Right.
So, yeah, I was very frustrated to see it. I hope that I don't know if we're going to be able to stop that because it's looped into such an enormous bill that does need to pass. I wish we could combat our debt issue in other ways, but unfortunately raising the debt ceiling is a necessity, more largely due to just inflation and interest. But I wish that we were able to parse out the specifics on a bill and pass it individually instead of lumping all of this pork into one giant bill where everybody gets a little something. And
we hear politicians talk about this all the time, about pork and stuff in bills. Why is nobody introducing legislation to stop this?
Well, because there's only three or four politicians I can think of with a sense of morality to be able to even bring it up in the first place. They would rather point the finger at somebody else and then remain completely quiet when it's their pork that's getting passed.
Yeah.
Right. For me, I will always be a Bernie Sanders supporter, but there's the AOCs up there. There's a few that are willing to call out, regardless if it hurts them or not. And Elizabeth Warren certainly is one. But we were talking a little off camera before this that for me it goes all the way back to 2008. And the Citizens United Supreme Court decision. From that point forward, personally for me, I think democracy's dead. I think we can continue to fight the fight in hopes that we can, keep the ship from completely flipping over. But I don't have millions of dollars to be able to really make an influence. All I can do is hope to persuade somebody who does.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Kansas was in the Kansas House and Senate. We're in a tizzy today, and we want to talk about a little bit about that here in the coming moments. We do want to take a small little break. We'll be right back. This is Sunflower State of Mind. right, and we are back with George Hanna from Kansas Normal. Really, I feel George is a lot more than just Kansas Normal.
He's for the people, man.
He's for the people, you know. And
I'm the only crazy person I know of that burned a $500 campaign contribution check online.
Oh, really? Who was it
Yeah,
from?
I received a contribution, which for my race was a max contribution, $500 individually, and but it was from a particular group that was, I don't know if it was intentional or unintentional, but long story short, there was some current legislation being debated where, had I been elected, I certainly would have been influential in being able to facilitate one way or the other. And I felt that it was inappropriate to send a contribution to a candidate with direct ties to pending legislation. That just comes straight out of my Bernie wheelhouse, and that, I just can't take corporate money like that. Even though this is technically wasn't a corporation, it was an association of corporations, close enough for me. So I declined and torched the check online.
Nice.
And
And
$500 to a house race is a hell of a lot of money.
Oh yeah, it absolutely. Hey, before we talk about those new bills, Kent, real quick, I just want to ask you, George, about, I don't know did you see the House Democrats demand action on cannabis amnesty?
I did.
What's your reaction to that? How do you feel about that?
Well, I was thrilled to see something. I think it's years too late. I think it's an attempt to hold them accountable. But I still think that a up or down vote would certainly be much easier to hold them accountable, because then you have the names. There's a lot to unpack there.
It was
you guys got a link or
that's
something.
way too small.
Hopefully you guys got a link or something where people can see it and read it. But I think
it's on our page.
There are certainly some people that are championing it, like Cindy Holzer, and kudos to Representative Garber from Sabetha. He carried our amendment, which is, as a Republican from a very conservative area, there are a lot of people that have looked into the benefits and have seen it and are willing to champion that. But as far as, I personally put cannabis in the Democratic platform in 3 different planks back in 2017. I mean, it's been a long minute. 2017, 2018, I put it in. You don't have a lot of Democrats really have been campaigning or pushing that until it becomes in the spotlight a little more. And I think if we had started that earlier, we'd have a better chance now.
Yeah, I agree. It's a nice gesture, and I appreciate there being some effort, but that's some strong wording for something you're not going to be able to do anything more about outside of that letter.
And I get it from their perspective. I understand they don't control the agenda. Sure. Unfortunately, the minority party, we are in the super minority. We really don't have the ability to drag it kicking and screaming to the floor for a vote. A lot of people don't seem to realize that the power within our legislature realistically is held by 4 people. Mm-hmm. They can decide to put something above the line for a vote or hold it down. And regardless,
Ty Matterson, name them.
Masterson, Hawkins, and then of course you've got the minority whips for whatever party, whatever chamber you happen to be talking about. And I don't know who it is in the Senate anymore, because they've made so many moves over in the Senate. But long story short, it's the Speaker of the House and the Senate President and the House President. without their blessing, you're not going to get it into a favorable committee. If it goes into a particular committee, you can always change chair to suit your needs, which is what happened this year in the Senate side. So unless they're willing to put forward the risk of putting it to a floor vote, which they won't, because now everybody's on the record, you're just not going to get it.
Right.
So I did want to talk a little bit about the Kansas State House and Senate. We're just going to briefly run through. Basically, it was a veto override vote day in the House and the Senate. It was very LGBTQ plus. So we want to talk about that a little bit. In the first one, the bathroom bill, many people have heard it called Senate Bill 180, was overridden. The veto was overridden today, which basically there's lots of proponents to the bill, which defines a female as able to produce ova and male able to fertilize the ova of a female. The bill, it really excludes intersex people. It takes away gender identity, and it says that biological sex should be defined in law, despite the fact that the federal government recognizes gender transition on documents, including passports and birth certificates. This bill completely rejects transgender people as an identity. It also states, they have to use their gender safe spaces. So if they were assigned as a female at birth and have transitioned into a man, they still have to use the female restroom. Or if they were born as assigned as a man at birth and have transitioned into a woman, they still have to use a men's restroom instead of the female's restroom. I think many people in Kansas feel like this is a non-issue, except for the extreme cult right. As far as the transgender movement goes right now, how soon do and it really opens up to me a level of scrutiny when you have a transgender man use a woman's bathroom for the first time after this bill goes into law. The type of danger it puts those people into as well. What are your guys' reactions? Do you think this bill's going to hold up? Does Kansas Supreme Court, federal Supreme Court, does it make sense? I mean, where do you guys stand with this?
Well, if you don't mind, Zach, I'll take that one first.
Go
I think
ahead.
you hit on two very important aspects of it, and that is one, you have completely erased a demographic. I mean, how tragic is that? You've got a percentage of Kansans now that feel absolutely ignored is not even really enough. Just they would now see themselves as just completely dehumanized, non-existent.
Yeah.
And to me, that's shameful. You wouldn't do that to anything living, animals, but yet to just completely say that that what they feel that they are is not a thing, to me is incomprehensible, and it's absolutely deplorable. But then to double down on that and to bring your second point, jeopardize their safety by, just the uneducated assholes out there that don't take the time to have a conversation with them, and these high school bullies essentially, to jeopardize their safety when they do go use the bathroom. Which, let's face it, I mean, that's in itself somewhat of a personal experience. Even if you're standing in line at a Chiefs game and you're pissing in the trough, you're still kind of keeping an eye out just to make sure somebody's not going to shove your head in the toilet. I can't believe that they would do that to another human being.
Yeah. It disgusts me. They use kids as an example with the bathroom. We got to protect the kids. We got to protect the kids. what drives me nuts is I don't know a sane person that wouldn't go absolutely crazy on somebody for hurting, assaulting a kid in a public bathroom at a public place, no matter who they were, transgender or not. And to define transgenders as the only segment of people that harass or abuse children in restrooms, I think is idiotic and stupid, and it actually hurts. It makes it more dangerous for kids because you're not being cautious of everybody else.
I think the thing that's the most dangerous about these bills is most people don't have any skin in this game. They don't have. I personally, I don't care what restroom you use or anything like that, but I also don't know anybody who's transgender. And the only reason I have a common discussion about it is because we have a podcast where these issues frequently come up. So there's the number of people who have no investment in which way it goes hinders the number of people fighting when these bills are passed at 3-4 in the morning. That, it's hard enough for anybody like us who pay attention to these things, let alone people who don't. But it is absolutely detrimental to those people who are transgender, who are LGBTQIA, who are have family members who are something like that, and it does affect lives, but the number of people fighting is fewer because it's a marginalized group like that.
Yeah. Well, and the bill even takes it. I touched on intersex, but ambiguous genitalia. Both female and male reproductive organs, women that are born without ovaries. This bill completely excludes them and leaves such a vague conversation open for what happens to these folks when they're accused of it. So that was Senate bill.
Unfortunately, that conversation is being had by people who have no business being in that conversation in the first place.
Right.
And
Exactly.
do not understand the perspective of these people. Now, everything I've tried to do, and I don't know if this is what made me such an effective, talker when I was campaigning, is I try to put myself in the other person's perspective. My life and my, what I have and the privileges that I have are dramatically different than the same privileges that you two have. And you're both white males.
Yeah.
So, but even then, it would be ignorant of me to assume that what I can do and talk about is the same as you two. So whenever I'm having a conversation, I try to put myself in the other person's shoes, literally. And so now you've got a bill that is affecting the health of thousands of Kansans and millions of Americans that is being done by people who have no business being in the conversation in the first place. And you can take that as far as you want. You can go into the abortion discussion. And as a man, I personally think I have very little skin in the game. And until the 51% of the women out there come up and say that abortion should be illegal, as far as I'm concerned, it's the law of the land, and it should be legal until otherwise. And I'm not going to go any further in the discussion on that. And so what they've done today, I think, is just an atrocity for Kansas. Hopefully it will not stand up to legal scrutiny, though.
On the flip side to that, Senate Bill 26 was sustained. The veto was sustained, which affirms gender-affirming care for patients in Kansas, which is a good thing, and which to me was extremely surprising, considered the state of things. So we do have to get, there was a positive in what's Senate Bill 180, which was, sustaining the veto on gender affirming care.
Wow, what a low bar we have.
What a low bar we have. But when I think we understand progress too, and how important that is. And we have to take our victories and celebrate them, no matter how small, or even, how overshadowed they are by all the other negatives that are out there. Also, the flat tax bill
That one
was the veto was sustained. As you know, the flat tax bill would have given a even across the board for all incomes in the state of Kansas. I think it was 15.5% was where they were going to tax at. This would have cost the poors, as we like to say, $1.4 billion, benefiting, giving tax cuts and breaks to the top 10%, top 1% that were astronomical.
And they knew it. They absolutely admitted it.
It would have.
I'm glad that veto stayed.
That veto stayed. HB 2094, work requirements for age 50 to 59 to receive SNAP benefits. Another was overridden. That will be going into law. HB 2138, an act separating overnight accommodations for students of biological sex during school district sponsored travel, providing an administrative review of resolutions to permanently close a school building. So this one's pretty dangerous for schools. I think that parents, this to me was another, like the Parents' Bill of Rights. It's a non-issue bill that's being forced down our throats to cause division on things. I think students know who they're going to be buddying up with, who they're going to be sleeping with well before trips. Have plenty of time to talk to their parents about it, and their parents have plenty of time to object to whatever those sleeping arrangements are, whatever they
I don't understand this at all. Like, I don't think kids should be sharing beds at all, no matter what gender. Like,
they are, yeah.
I wouldn't even make my own kids share a bed.
Well, it's a bedroom, so I think they're getting like hotels with double.
Okay, well, something like that. Bob Lewis made it sound like they were sharing a bed at the last legislative coffee.
Sure, because that's a knee-jerk reaction that a lot of people would have. So we have to sensationalize it a little bit to make sure that everybody is all freaked out about it.
Yeah,
it's an issue that hasn't been an issue until they tell you it's an issue. I mean,
and there's 4 people in Kansas that are transitioning and want to play sports.
There are currently 4 transgender students who wanted to play sports in the state of Kansas, who played sports in the state of Kansas this school year. 3 of them are graduating this year. There will be 1 next year in the entire state of Kansas. From what I'm told, this athlete is not very skilled and isn't making a difference being on the team as far as giving them an athletic advantage or taking away
for most cases
a young female's opportunity on that team. So realistically we're targeting 1 person in the entire state of Kansas with these anti-trans bills.
These guys are working till 4 a.m. for 1 person and refuse to hear anybody else unless you've got a paycheck for them.
Mm-hmm. And most of these,
they're working for somebody, but it's not that person. I guarantee you.
Oh yeah.
You've got the focus on the family. You've got these super PACs that are predominantly religious by nature funding all of these. Make no mistake, that's who they're working for.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, and out here they don't even have to hide it. In every legislative coffee they talk about their God and how it influences their votes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. One of the bigger bills that was overlooked, I think, by a lot of people, especially out here in western Kansas, was the human smuggling bill. This basically makes it easier for law enforcement to pull over or to profile, basically. What we're going to see is an uptick in Hispanic culture being pulled over or harassed, and people being asked for papers and to prove that they're U.S. citizens. It's going to be a nightmare as far as unlawful search and seizures go. I just don't see this bill being good for the state of Kansas for the people that are here legally. Like I said, this is a profiling bill and puts them at risk. That veto was overridden today. Also, another non-issue. Another bill that I think is going to be highly contested through the channels is HB 2264, requiring notification to patients that affects that the effects of medication abortion may. So basically, abortion pills can be reversible. Is what they want taught to people who are considering abortion before they have an abortion, which is highly illegal. It's wrong. These pills, abortion pills, I don't believe are reversible.
Doctors currently to this day are required to tell patients that an abortion could cause breast cancer, and there's no proof of that, but they still require doctors to tell patients that.
Yeah, and this one was a really wild one. It was falling short, and a Democrat did cross the aisle on this one and vote for it to put that one through. So it'll be interesting to see there. Another bill that I don't think has ever happened in the state of Kansas. For one, it's a big national issue, which was the Born Alive Infant Protection bill. I don't believe a baby has ever been born alive and killed in regards to abortions.
Yeah.
In the state of
Another waste of
Kansas. So
time
at least since what, 2003 or 2000, was it 2003 or 2008 when all those abortion laws got changed here in the state? Anyway, I'll look that up later and let you guys know. So that just doesn't happen here. Another bill, where they're wasting our time. Something that they really worked hard on and they were awfully proud of was changing the way you vote, removing the 3-day grace period on your mail-in ballots, advance ballots. We were talking about thousands of voters being disenfranchised with this bill, and I'm shocked that it was sustained. That veto was sustained. Another big one for anti-discrimination was a provision banning the Behavioral Health and Science Regulatory Board from requiring diversity, equity, and inclusion training was sustained as well. We need that kind of stuff. At our universities and in our government. So, quick little rundown of what happened, KS Leg. We'll have a bigger breakdown for you guys next week on some of those bills and some more local stuff too. I know we've kind of left the Board of Education, USD 457, and the City Commission.
We
so we'll be
didn't
circling
forget you
back.
teachers.
We have not forgotten you. Yeah, we're coming back to it. We've got a pretty big show planned for you guys next week. George, thank you again so much for being with us here tonight. Before we let you go, any final thoughts on any of the subjects that we've talked about?
No, other than I just want to say thanks to you guys for doing what you're doing. Every now and then I catch a little bit, and I'm thrilled to see it. I wish I had the energy that you two do to continue in. Unfortunately, after a little over 10 years of fighting a vigorous fight, I need to, work on my own sanity a little bit. Being around,
we look forward to a Red Bull sponsorship at some point.
and somebody out there. But I really appreciate you guys having me on, and hopefully we can make some noise here next year.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How do people follow Kansas Normal?
Right now, I think we have about 8,000 or so in Kansas, or at least follow Kansas Normal. We have.
Well, how do they find you guys? How do they follow you? Kansas Normal, if you haven't already.
You just find us on Facebook. It's KS Normal. You can go to ksnormal.org for the website. And then, of course, there's links through the national, which is normal.org. It's .org, isn't it, Zach, for the national?
Yeah, it's .org. Mm-hmm.
And I would encourage everybody to go there anyway, because if you second guess anything I have to say, find it. We've got a vast library of peer-reviewed studies, all the way down from our own government's opinions on cannabis, and those may surprise you. All the way down to. Well, believe it or not, there's a Department of Agriculture says that there's benefits to it. Of course, Dr. Voth would argue that. Yeah.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
that's one argument that I know we got to wrap, but the fact that we don't ever factor in how much money leaves the state, whether you use it or not. Kansas dollars leave the state permanently because of it not being legalized here. And then one thing that Western Kansas doesn't realize, because it's so stigmatized, is how we could replace our water consuming corn growth with hemp growth and use it for the exact same products that we use that corn for, whether it be ethanol or feeding cattle and everything in between.
Now, there's a small
Well,
plant here in Moscow, Kansas, which is just a little more south and west than us, that make all the paper tray holders for McDonald's and Wendy's and all that. Them being able to convert to hemp and just doing that in here at Southwest Kansas almost immediately would be amazing.
I was
And
I was at CannaFest week and a half ago in Kansas City, and wow, what a fantastic sight! I mean, there were thousands of people. It was in a secure facility behind a gate, so it was a private. Because you had to purchase tickets, so that therefore no longer makes it a public event. And there were hundreds of people just sitting around smoking and enjoying pleasant conversations with no problems or worries whatsoever.
That's usually how it goes.
Yeah. And being a native of Colorado, we've got it on both ends, and I can attest to thousands of my dollars going to one or both of those states. So I just wish they would wake up here in Kansas.
Well, George, thank you again so much for joining us here tonight. We're going to let you go. We do look forward to talking to you again, probably sometime in the next session. And as other things come up outside of cannabis as well, you've been very enlightening for us here tonight. Thank you so much.
It was my pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
Have a great night, George. And that was George Hanna from Kansas Normal. What a guy.
Good show.
That was a really
great
good
conversation.
I learned a lot. I did know a lot about George or Kansas Normal at the beginning of this show, and I know a whole lot now. And I'm really, really sad that I didn't get to rally behind one of his campaigns. I think I'd get along with him, and a lot of his views, match with mine. I know he was on the Democratic Executive Committee or board or whatever they call it, and you guys know me. I'm an independent. So that would have kind of whatever, but he sounds really purple to me.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people do.
Well, Democrats are really good at pushing away people.
At the end of the day, we all want the same things.
Right.
We all have the same goals. It's just about a different road, a different path to get there. So, Zach, you have any final thoughts tonight before we go?
Yeah, I believe in smaller government, and smaller government means what you do in your own home shouldn't be anybody's business as long as nobody's getting hurt. And we used to believe that in this country, and we should get back to it. We used to believe in freedom in this state. We used to fight for that. We need to get back to that. Ty Masterson needs to start listening to the people, and Troy Unruh, it's time to retire. Time to quit, buddy. Go fuck yourself. Night, guys.
And with that, have a good night.
Have a good